today's May 14th. It's slated the FDA is supposed to actually have some sort of response on August 14th, which is 3 months from now. One question, do you believe the FDA will approve this drug? And two, what do you think happens? Like, again, this public sector, the stocks have been brutal. One can only speculate that these stocks will rip. Do you think with a lot of consolidation and who's left, you'll see a big resurgence and a big rally in this space like we saw in the early days with psychedelics back in 2021? Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dale. Has been talking a lot about earnings lately in cannabis. We're flipping the script today. We're talking psychedelics. These stocks, they've been quiet for the first 6 months of this year, but things could wake up in a hurry. Why? Well, let's welcome in our two guests here today. As usual, Anthony Varell, TDR co-host. Good to see you.
How's it going? It's been a while since we've got psychedelics on the docket.
Look at that big smile.
Good to have Cody back for once.
Dude,
and,
I've missed
really
you guys.
To dive in. Yeah.
That big old smile in the middle. Good to see you, my friend.
I've missed you boys. I thought you forgot about me.
You have been traveling a lot.
I have.
Building a lot of infrastructure for the industry. You've been to New York. What are all the places you've been to the last couple months? And what gives you a lot of positive optimism? Share some of the journey the last couple 60 days.
Listen, we've done Boston, New York, Chicago, Naples, Boca, Palm Beach, Denver. We got Texas coming up. I mean, yeah, man, the show has not stopped. It's been incredible. I'm very, very, very grateful to have. Listen, as much doom and gloom as is being shown from the public standpoint. Dude, this is the most exciting time because listen, we've seen the exact same thing in cannabis, right? Like it's a natural industry life cycle, right? You have the gold rush, everybody's rushing towards the gate, trying to plant their flags, what they're going to be doing, what they're going to be good at. 99% of it is horse shit, unfortunately. But the good news is now we're in the consolidation phase where who's left? It's the real companies now. Now we get to see what the actual science is, what the actual data is, where the real money's going to go to. And now we're going to start to have a really good understanding of exactly what this blossoming industry is going to be in the next 5 years. So I'm more excited today than I was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Okay, so walk us in those hallways, down those hallways, and in those rooms. What are the conversations that make you feel so optimistic on stuff that you're hearing as to why people are interested in this space right now? Because like you said, on the public side, these stocks, very quiet.
Yeah, but the good news is that the major players, you're not seeing, listen, these things are pretty much holding still. You're not seeing the giant sell-offs and things so if you were in for the long haul, you're actually probably not in a worse situation than you were 6-12 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's probably number one from obviously an investment standpoint. But what gets me most excited is the conversations that we're having from the infrastructure side with the funds that you listen, these are household names. I will say that of the types of funds that are looking, because right now, the drug development portfolio is a little too early for a lot of these guys, but medical office real estate, where these drugs are going to be delivered, that is not too early because most of the practitioners that we talk to, these aren't just ketamine guys. These are guys that are offering existing behavioral mental health services, whether it's a lot of people don't realize inbound wise, we haven't done a single outbound pitch to any operator that's in our
Everything has been inbound,
dude.
Okay.
Everything.
Wow. So that leads me to this. Where are we, or where do we stand from an infrastructure perspective? Right now, are these companies just desperate to have footprints built out 100, and start to get this going?
So I'm going to use a couple different things, and I won't throw anybody's names out there out of respect. Obviously, NDA with some of these guys, but think about it this way, okay? Capital markets are in a very difficult position right now. Raising equity is extremely expensive. I don't care what industry you're in. That's number one. Number two, debt markets are an absolute nightmare. Caught myself. A lot of these guys don't want to go and pay 7, 8, 9, 10, up to 15% to expand their footprint for debt money. So where do you go? You have to go to a real estate partner that you're signing a long-term lease with that is going to be building that out. And why is that important? Jeffrey's analyst covered the Q1 earnings for Spravato, the Johnson & Johnson. There was an interesting quote that I don't think a lot of people picked up on his analysis was psychedelics are here to stay. The commercial viability of these things is strong. What is stopping this from being a $5 billion a year drug? The infrastructure.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to think the average therapist visits like 27 or 28 minutes, dude. Like all of the existing infrastructure was built out for
That's
these
for
short.
That's for Spravato.
That this is specifically for Spravato, but
Okay.
we're just talking. Think about just the mental health. Like typically right now, if you weren't taking Spravato and you were just going to talk to your psychiatrist, therapist, it's like a 27, 28-minute visit, dude. Like that business model is built on high patient inflows. You know what I mean? You want to touch contact sport. You want to touch as many people as you can. Spravato had such a slow commercialization route because let's say you owned a facility down in Miami, right?
Yeah.
You'd see if it's a 30-minute visit, how many people you see in a day? Maybe 10 to 16,
Yeah.
right? Okay, 30-minute average visit. Spravato, they need to be in your clinic for 2 hours. So now what are you going to see? 4 patients a day? So it created this giant shortfall of like just the actual infrastructure requirements for how these clinics were laid out. It didn't make sense for a lot of these doctors to put it in. But now you see the commercial viability. Like think about it this way. When Spravato launched, I think there were 81 ketamine clinics in the United States in 2019.
What's it now?
Today, there's almost 2,500 of them.
Wow.
Spravato's on a $900 million run rate for this year. Like,
so question. We see a lot of other drugs that are in development right now. Psilocybin, MDMA, DMT, LSD. Does Spravato have that first mover advantage being in the market right now and treating people to where it will impact those drugs in the future? Or is there room on a case-by-case basis for everything to kind of coexist like you see portfolios today?
Yeah.
The amount of indications that we're looking at, if everybody was targeting the same indication, I think it'd be a different story. But like, let's just look at Lykos. So we're talking what, mid-August approval is the expectation right now. I think that their FDA meeting is in June next month. Think about it this way: 9 million adults. Like we're not even talking children. 9 million adults in the United States have a PTSD diagnosis.
Yeah.
Okay. Like think about that. Yeah, man. Think about what we're actually talking about. Like the requirements. I think Rick floated this number not too long ago. To treat 1.1 million people, 16,000 centers are going to need to be built or renovated to accomplish that.
So the rollout in the early days is going to be bumpy. Like, what are realistic expectations of like how many people you think in the first year, 2 years that you're going to be able to obviously service?
Listen, man, I don't own a drug company. Obviously, I'm an investor in a couple, but I think that MAPS and Lykos are an institute. They're a pillar of the community, right? Decades of work, everything that they've done. I don't want to understate this, but if I had to put on my capitalist hat for a little bit, do you want to know where I would probably be betting is on Compass? Because let's just say it follows a similar path, okay, that Spravato did on the build out, and it takes 5 years for this to become viable because of the lack of actual infrastructure to treat patients. Think about it this way, okay? All of these long duration rooms that are built to have someone for 6 to 8 hours, if I'm looking at this, Lykos is going to have that really long lag time like Spravato did while all this gets built out.
That's interesting.
Compass is literally probably going to walk into a fully built out ecosystem of clinics and trained practitioners almost immediately. So if I'm a betting man, not only from a patent standpoint with the 20-year exclusivity on there before it hits generic, but also because they're going to move into commercialization much, much, much quicker because all of the infrastructure is going to be, it's going to be years.
Yeah, it's a good point. So where does, like, I've had conversations with Peyton Nyquist and Numinous a few times, but where do they fit into all this with their clinical model?
Listen, I think, we even talked about this, guys. I think it was a year ago.
Yeah.
I was,
Yeah.
and listen, I love Peyton. I'm a shareholder in Numinous. You know what I mean? But you look, and we talked about that boom phase, right? That the industry went through. Everybody was trying to do everything. Okay. I feel like Numinous now has a really direct line at what they're good at. Like
Right.
Yeah.
they know how to run profitable clinics now. All right,
Yeah.
like outside of being CRO site, like that's all great and dandy, and that's generating revenue and that's good for shareholders. But two important things come from that, right? Number one, you know what it takes from a staffing requirement. Okay,
Yeah.
that's huge because you're not overstaffing these clinics, and that's where a lot of the actual drain. Like, dude, I mean, we've done due diligence on hundreds of clinics now. Staffing is like the biggest drain on these companies. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
most people understand. Like, depending on the markets you're in, dude, you might be paying $100,000 a year for a nurse. Like, think
Yeah.
about
Really?
that. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and especially like look at the markets, dude. Like you're in Chicago, you're in New York, you're competing with major healthcare systems that need staffing.
Yeah.
Dude, you're paying a pretty penny for for talent.
Have
It
you
just
seen, speaking of revenue generation, have you seen or heard from any of the insurance companies? Or has there been any sort of headway as per like insurance covering this stuff?
You got a bad poker face. Look at that smile.
yeah, I've no comment.
So there's
Listen,
interest. Okay.
yeah. Again, let's think about the patient population that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Veterans, very luckily, are one of the last issues in this country that the right and the left can both agree upon.
Yeah.
So we've also seen, like, just at the Horizons conference, the undersecretary of the VA, like, dude, they are very excited and they are actively pursuing
Yeah.
all of
Good.
the
It's
treatment
about
options that
damn
are
it's
coming.
about damn time. It's about damn time
Yeah,
that they
and
have.
like, one of the interesting things, like we talk about cannabis on here a couple times, here and there. He already said support at the VA has already surpassed
Yeah.
cannabis
Yeah.
for
I
psychedelic.
100% believe that. Yep.
I mean, the
So,
veterans need, we've talked about it with Wiz, the veterans need meaningful change, and they need meaningful change yesterday.
yeah.
Not tomorrow.
So what I do think is going to happen though is r- believe this to the fullest sense. The government is slow. So what I think we're going to end up seeing happen, I don't know this, what I think is we're going to end up seeing TRICARE, the VA
Okay.
insurance. I
Yeah.
think we're going to see them put something in place for reimbursement for these services through third party practices via that community care network. Is probably,
Okay.
if
Wow.
I had to guess, what we're going to
That makes
what we're
sense.
going to see this end
Okay.
up
So
shaking out.
today's May 14th. It's slated the FDA is supposed to actually have some sort of response on August 14th, which is 3 months from now. One question, do you believe the FDA will approve this drug? And two, what do you think happens? Like, again, this public sector, the stocks have been brutal. One can only, like, speculate that these stocks will rip. Do you think with a lot of consolidation and who's left, you'll see a big resurgence and a big rally in this space like we saw in the early days with psychedelics back in 2021?
I think you could see a market move unlike anything for an industry throughout public markets history.
You believe that strong? Wow.
Listen, because this is going to set the bar. Like, I want you, let's just talk about the first 5 months of this year. Okay. Like the Gilgamesh
Yeah.
news yesterday with AbbVie, right? Like that deal could be up to $1.9 billion. Okay.
Yeah.
For Gilgamesh. I want you to think about that. Why is that important? Funny enough, I had this pulled up. AbbVie literally acquired for $63 million Allergan. Okay, what is Vraylar? One of Allergan's largest drugs: schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and major depressive disorder. So you look at these psychiatric indications, like, and we talked about mindset too. Like I called it on here, whatever that was, a
Yeah.
year or two ago.
Yep.
Why did Otsuka buy Mindset Pharma? What was Mindset's lead indication? Major depressive disorder. What patent ran out for Otsuka's lead drug? Major depressive disorder.
Yeah.
Like, dude, a lot of these drugs, you have to think, a lot of these drugs have been being prescribed for 10, 15, 20 years.
So then are the big boys looking at the psychedelic? Are the big boys looking at these psychedelic drug development companies essentially as second generation drugs to treat these indications on the backs of their expiring moats on their current drugs that are being sold
100%.
into market?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good
From an
because
idiot's
that gives
point of
them,
view.
yeah, I mean, that's good because that gives them an incentive to go out in the market, buy a new indication or buy a new drug, and it's actually better than the shit that they're selling right now.
And they already have all of the sales channels that their
Correct.
existing drugs that they've been
It
selling
goes
for those
straight-
indications. They're like,
yeah, it goes straight through.
I mean, dude, it literally, like, you couldn't make this. I mean, it's literally now a feeder system for all of these large pharma companies, man.
So you think if the FDA were to approve, a rising tide lifts all boats? Like, this is their specific drug, their protocol. But if you've got, let's say, for example, a company like Cybin that's working on a phase 3 DMT that's unrelated to what the news came out, you think key players within this space have tremendous upside based off of that news and being a pillar of the industry? That's what you're thinking?
I don't see how it could play out any other way. And like, you know, listen, not only did we talk about mindset and we called that 2 years early on TDR, but I want to remember who else did we call during that same exact episode that Simon acquired?
Small pharma.
Small pharma. Yeah.
Great IP.
So you want those early picks, you got to show up to the TDR, you know what I mean? That's the only way to get them.
It's true.
Listen, when I look at this, the last 60 days, think about this. Cybin raised 150 million. MindMed raised 175 based off their groundbreaking phase 2 study for general anxiety disorder. That was back early March. Reunion Neuroscience, 103 million. Atai, 50 million. You just announced, like I said, Gilgamesh and AbbVie. That's, last I checked, that AbbVie is a market cap, you guys were telling me, is
283 billion.
Jeepers. Okay.
Yeah, man.
10 times larger.
Walk me through
larger than the entire cannabis sector.
You know, the Reunion Neuroscience company, was that part of the drug development side of Field Trip?
Yeah. So I actually, and you know, I just want to listen. I'm a big enough man. I talked a lot of shit about the Field Trip team very early on because not only were they spending insane amounts of money on the clinical cities where it just didn't make sense, but outside of that, I also bitched about them spending money on a drug development program when they were clinic operators.
Yeah.
But now seeing that, you know, I mean, you got to sit back and you got to wonder, was that the prudent move? Should that have been made earlier? And should that break off between those two companies had that happened at an earlier date, who knows what we'd be talking about right now for that. You know what I mean? It's crazy to sit back and to look at that. I did hear through the grapevine, though, I heard that their lead molecule, I heard that we could end up possibly seeing some IP issues and maybe lawsuits around that from some of the other companies in the space.
What is it? What's the therapy with Reunion?
I believe it's DIPT DMT, I believe. But I know that there were a lot. Yeah, I know that there were a lot of companies that were kind of everybody, you know, again, back to the gold rush days, right? 4 or 5 years ago, and everybody was just throwing patents against the wall to see what stuck. Yeah. So listen, I'm going to have to imagine that there were a lot of people that were way smarter than me doing due diligence during that deal process. So whatever that they pulled during that, I'm guessing satisfied requirements around there, but that was chatter that was going around a while back that I heard that the listeners should probably be aware of.
Cool.
This kind of we've been so fixated on cannabis lately. That's probably a good conversation to have, but man, it's amazing how much like kind of lit up the room based on what you've been seeing in the advancements with the industry. You want to talk about, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, think about this. Okay. So like we're talking about all these different drug companies. Did you know what this is going to do for the greater behavioral health fit? Like, Think about this, okay? Like, let's talk about addiction centers, okay?
Yeah.
We talked with an operator, okay? They right now, I think it's like 21 or 22% of their patients that they're intaking for the last 11 years have a PTSD diagnosis,
Hmm.
okay? He thinks that number could be as high as 60% that is just not diagnosed. One of the largest eating disorder chains in the country that we spoke with, 11% of their patients have a PTSD diagnosis. It was the traumatic event that created the eating disorder. And they're like,
Yeah.
dude, when you really like zoom out and
Yeah.
look at all of these things, it is going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, it's changing every single like what I thought our tenant base was I thought it was going to be all of these ketamine guys, man. Like
Yeah.
it's fascinating
Well, the
the amount.
problem with the ketamine clinics is like they just couldn't convert a lot of these patients to come over time and time again. It wasn't that's the
So
issue.
surprisingly, I talked with one of the largest operators in the country by volume for Spravato. Okay, they own a chain of clinics in the great state of Florida. He is now a drug rep for Janssen.
Hmm.
Okay. And think about this. The problem is what we're talking about is the old days when everybody was doing IV and IM ketamine.
Yeah.
And it was all cash pay. Dude, insurance isn't like that.
No.
Like right now, Spravato, like depending on the square footage of the clinic, like let's just use a 2,000 square foot clinic. Dude, you reach 67 patients at a 2,000 square foot facility. You're opening up another facility because right
Really?
now you can use Spravato once a week, every week for 5 years.
Hmm. What are they
So
forecast to do this year in sales again?
900 million.
Wow. I know they
Dude, so
what they do last year, was it over 5?
I think it was
I thought it was
4.
in the I thought it was like mid to high threes.
But it compounded in a hurry, so you can
What
understand the growth from 5 to
the
9, and then where does it go from there?
infrastructure. Listen, I'm telling you what, if let's just use if there are 10,000 of these clinics spread out across the United States, this becomes a $5 billion a year drug
Yeah.
for them. Let's be very clear. COVID did not help mental health.
No.
No.
Locking people away from other people, putting them in front of screens and social media all day, that did not do anything to inhibit personal growth for a majority of people. People are suffering, and now you add on economic conditions, like things are not getting better, unfortunately.
No.
So the ability is just to have a multitude of options of treatment for patients. And that's one of the great things about Spravato, right? Like, depending on the insurance carrier that you have, you need to try 2, 3, 4 other drugs in some cases before you're even
Yeah.
eligible to get prescribed Spravato.
Mhm.
Like, you have to remember it's treatment resistant
I was just gonna
depression. So, like,
say, isn't it to qualify for ketamine from an insurance perspective, you have to have TRD. So I mean, they
yeah,
got to go through everything
yeah.
first
Some
to get
insurance
there.
companies some insurance carriers are great, dude. You've tried 2 drugs, it didn't work, you can try Spravato. Some are you've
Okay.
tried 4 drugs, but like think about the pain of going through trying 4 different pharmaceuticals that didn't work, feeling helpless. Like that's the
Yeah.
problem. You know what I mean? So hopefully, some of these other drugs go for indications where this could be a first line of defense as
Yeah.
far as treatment goes.
You know what's helping too? You gotta have the right messaging when you're speaking to Washington. Like, sometimes when you have some of these advocates that go, it's just like you gotta have the right representation. What I'm seeing more and more is the business acumen of people that are getting involved in this space. Like, we don't need the people donating money towards solar panels at a hut in Brazil. Like, those aren't the types of people that need to be leading this
Yeah.
messaging. I'm getting to see more and more business people involved. And as much as like the whole capitalist side of this industry, it's an important one. You have to obviously blend between the both to understand the history of it all. But in order for it to be around, you have to have a sustained business model. Are you seeing more of that?
Oh, well, I'll never forget, man. I have a great case study for that. It was in Washington, D.C. with a lobbying group talking about psychedelics, and Wiz was actually there. Uh, the Republican side of visits, it was me, Wiz, and Darren Gardner.
Yeah.
Dude, there were like 30 people there. The other 27 went and visited with the Democrat side of the like. I was like, dude, like, so you're leaving off half of the people that are literally helping pass laws, give research grants. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like, unfortunately, and you even like cannabis had the same thing, right? Like the roots versus the suits arguments. You had the hippie crowd, you had the capitalist crowd. Like, unfortunately, when both sides are competing against each other, you're literally making it more difficult to make
100%.
things happen.
Work.
100%.
So I don't and I see the infighting all the time at conferences and fucking on messaging board. I'm like, dude, why?
Oh, look at Maps. Look at the Maps
Yeah.
conference. It was like tribalism.
I've never seen anything like it, man. Like, yo, we're all trying to reach for the same goal, and like everybody's goal. I don't give a shit if you operate a clinic in Washington, D.C., or if you operate a retreat in Costa Rica. Like, why would the mission not be to provide access to as many people as humanly possible through whatever different modality they want to explore? And bottom, like, just the most important point on that, I want you to think about 100 people that you know. Out of that 100, do you think more than 10 are going to leave their life and go down to a retreat somewhere in South or Central America?
No.
Not even one.
And
Barely
now,
one.
and now think about it this way, okay? Even if there were those types of shamanistic retreats here in the United States, are your parents or your grandparents going to go to one of those, or are they going to go to their doctor that they've been seeing for 20 years?
No.
You've been doing your homework.
It's a good
example. Live and breathe this every day, man. So
Yeah, it's great.
all that I do.
You got me excited because it's like if we do get approval come August or whatever, if it's a couple days, this will be delayed. It won't be surprised. But if indeed this does pass, you got me obviously very laser focused on this industry again. If you're, thinking what kind of rally this could present, but yeah, it's going to be groundbreaking if it indeed does get FDA approval.
Yeah, and listen again, like we talk about people that are smarter than the three of us on this call right now, dude. If you see that type of money pouring back into this industry, that's probably pretty good chance it's not by accident.
Yeah. Well, I do want to bring up, there's actually a story in the Wall Street Journal. Jeff George, who's the chairman of Lykos Therapeutics, he was actually quoted at the Horizons Psychedelic Therapy Conference, which is taking place this week in New York City, that this is going to cost a lot of money. This, while he was attending, like I said, we're on the verge of, what do you say? We're on the verge of breaking into the mainstream healthcare establishment. Like he said, it's going to cost a lot of money. So as much as, a lot of these companies have raised a lot of money, there's still a lot more money that's going to be raised. But I think the first thing, domino effect for this industry, if you get FDA approval, that will come, don't you think?
100%. And listen, I'm going to guess you're going to probably start to see, we talked about the consolidation size that's occurred over the last, let's just call it 24 months from some of the smaller guys. Dude, if there is a drug approval that happens in this space and insurance starts to get in, you're not going to see 50, $100 million types of deals. You're going to see multi-$100 million, $1 billion types of deals.
Yeah, that's the kind of money that needs to be raised. But I definitely see that happening.
The money's there. The money's definitely there for biotech and for drug development. I mean, it's one thing.
Dude,
medicine attracts a lot of money.
Look at XBI, dude. Look where the biotech index, dude. Biotech has what is the last revolutionary I mean, there was that giant jump during COVID, right? When all of the new vaccines
prior to COVID, when I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I think the last big breakthrough, which I don't even know if it was that big, was the Hep C cure, like Wegovy, and I think that was it. And I don't even think that was big. That wasn't even big.
Yeah, there's some interesting transplant therapies for rejection rates that are coming down the pipeline. There's some really new interesting things with AI on personalized medicine. That's dude, if I zoom out and I look at the 10, 15-year horizon for this, I can imagine a world where it's not going to be well, MDMA is going to work for you because it worked for these previous 300 people. I think that they're going to be able to get down to a place where they're going to be able to identify your genome and specifically see which drugs interact best with you. That is really where I think that this is going.
How
That's
do you
where
do
it's
that?
going.
I don't know,
CRISPR.
but
Your CRISPR and AI.
that's
It's already being done. They're
Yeah.
already on the way there. They're already on the way
100%,
there.
100% that's going to happen. Wow, this has been great, buddy.
Yeah, listen,
This
it's good to
has
be
been really
back, man. Like I said, I missed you guys.
I know.
Yeah.
Miss you too. It's time to get the band back together.
I know. We need we need another good conference or another good event to do this again.
Yeah.
We saw you briefly
Is
at
there a MAPS
Zenga.
conference? Is there a MAPS conference this year?
I think they pushed it to next year.
Yeah. I saw you guys briefly towards the end of the Benzenga conference, and I was like, look who's here.
We'll still pop my head in every now and again, you know, see what shit. Dude, I listen, just for all the listeners. I had to stop watching my cannabis investments because it was personally like I was gonna need to go sign up for one of these clinical trials like soon because I was at a place where I couldn't do it anymore. I really couldn't. Like it was driving me nuts, man. Like I feel like every time like some new news came out, I'd get excited again, and then nothing would happen, and like it was safe for banking again, and like I also want to call out. I told you that safe for banking wouldn't gonna happen. I told you both.
Like I'm Cody Shandraw from TDR.
Dude, I'm so sick of like
I know.
those fucking guys in Washington, dude. They just can't get their head out of their ass long enough.
Well, you made an interesting point about how the narrative towards psychedelics is actually passing what cannabis is amongst different lawmakers and politicians, which doesn't surprise me because, you know, I think these politicians are smart enough to realize that the true play of cannabis is the adult use recreational play.
Yeah.
Dude, it was a Trojan horse, dude. It was a little bit of science to get into the rec. That was
but when
that
you
was
compare,
it. Where this was almost the opposite. It was like a little bit of rec got into the medical side. Like,
well, it helps obviously with the data that's being produced. And let's face it, some of the best, what have you said in the previous podcast? Some of the most, I guess, beneficial SSRIs for those that work, seeing success rates of like 5, 7, 8%. And you're looking at north of 50, 60% with some of the research that's being conducted so far. So,
you know, and I'm so deep in the space that like, you know, it's hard to have a wide perspective, right? Because like I've been in it every single day for 5 years, 6 years, whatever the fuck it's been. Joe, the CEO of Healing Realty Trust, dude, I'll never forget what he said to me when we were at the MAPS conference. We walked out of there the first day and he was like, I don't think you understand what this is. And I was like, I'm like, dude, I probably understand this better than most people you're going to talk to, you know? And he was like, no. He's like, you don't. He was like, if I look at the first 5 years of cannabis and who is in these rooms, and I look at psychedelics the first 5 years of where you guys are and who's in these rooms, he was like the class of people from doctors, from patients, from researchers, from bankers, like it is
was so much more advanced than what cannabis was.
It's not even, I mean, it's not even close.
The first 5 years of cannabis, dude, MJ Biz used to be like D-boys walking around and like let people from the legacy, like legit, like legacy people from like
Tyler
just walking around the conference.
Yeah.
Tyler Berline used to say at the Caesars where they had the original MJ Biz, they all would sit close to the exit doors just in case the police came in and raided the place.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was real. Cannabis in the early days was like real.
Yeah.
But it was the legacy market coming into the legit market. And conferences were weird.
It's wild to think about because, like, listen, you guys were both there, like, in it every day. So, like, having an outsider give that perspective, like,
it's good.
Yeah. And Joe is an insider.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like,
Joe saw this shit take place.
All right.
Yeah. And then, like, got to walk in 5 years later after the psychedelic industry had already been there and, like, got to look. And he's like, holy like, it's this completely different thing.
If there's anyone that knows real estate, it's Joe.
Boy, does he. Boy, does he, dude. He's
All right.
got some special stuff coming down. Yeah,
By the
it's
way,
gonna be.
we have not color graded this video. Those teeth are as white as they look. You look at that smile, buddy. Listen, I do want to wrap things up, but when you talked about consolidation, as I said, some of these companies that we've outlined, like the Mind Meds, the Cybins, Compass, Tide, they did 50 million. I forgot to mention them. These are some
Into Beckley, don't forget. It wasn't
into
a Ty didn't get that money. A Ty put that 50 into Beckley because you got to look at where a Ty was, right? Like I think we even talked about this. I told you guys last year, a Ty was going to look like a different company this year.
yeah.
You look at where they were, staffing, burning cash, bunch of preclinical assets. Beckley immediately moved them in. Obviously, listen, they're very large shareholders in Compass, so that's a big piece to that. But you look at actually like where they are right now with the Compass position that they hold, and now with the Beckley, dude, they got some late stage clinical assets now that
Right.
could move them towards cash very, very, very quickly.
But this is the consolidation you're talking about now. The companies that are left, you see these companies, moving a lot in the event that there's an FDA approval. And you also think that there's, I guess, a narrative or an angle for Numinous, knowing that they're on the clinical side of a lot of these drug development companies. I know they are working in collaboration with a few of them right now, but this is the space that you think, the current space we're here now, and what you see, I guess, moving in the next couple of months in the event that we do see approval.
Listen, the public's one thing. I don't think a lot of people realize there are a lot of very large private companies still, man.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there are a lot of guys that seen the blood in the streets and we're like, yeah, no, I think we'll stay private right
Yeah.
now and run lean. Like I think you're gonna see some bigger announcements come in the next several months from some of these private guys, between acquisitions of potential public IP portfolios to listen, it's going to get exciting, I think, for a lot of different reasons for a lot of different companies, not only from the drug side, but you want to know what nobody else is talking about?
What?
What industries in healthcare, from an actual service perspective, are left for PE to start acquiring? Mental and behavioral health. Dental's already been rolled up,
Dental's rolled up. So is
right?
dialysis a long time ago.
Fresenius and all the
You've got
dude.
eye centers. You've probably got eye centers, and then behavioral health
So
is probably next on the list.
I think the story for the next 24 months to watch is going to be, are these PE companies going to come in and start rolling up a lot of these small mom and pop types of operators? That's when we started the REIT, right? Like one of the things that we talked about early on is look at what happened in self-storage. Okay.
Yeah.
You had a lot of these single standalone types of operators that were rolled up by these very large companies and institutionalized to become real profitable businesses that watched every penny that came in and out of the company. Mental and behavioral health is very simple. Dude, psychiatrists, they all have different personalities. You know what I mean? Like most dentists that you go to, whether they're in Milwaukee or Miami, they're probably the same guy, probably talk the same way, probably offer the same treatment. You go to a therapist or a psychiatrist in Milwaukee, and you go to a therapist, psychiatrist in Miami,
Night and day.
you're probably going to have two completely different experiences.
Yeah.
For better or for worse, say what you want. I mean, the homogenization of healthcare is maybe not the best things in a lot of instances, but what it does do is create lower cost structures for a lot of the cases, right? Because now you're standardizing care across drug, med management, or you name it, just the services that they're offering. But now you know that whether you're on vacation, if you need to go see a psychiatrist, you're still getting the same care that you would get back at home. You know what I mean? So that I think is going to be a really, really, really close story to watch. I've been shocked. Some of the companies that we're in due diligence on, I didn't realize like they have huge private equity backers.
Yeah.
For like 80, 90, $100 million types of transactions to grow their footprints across the United States. Like, I think there's going to be a really big story in that too, especially as some of these new therapies like are starting to be, like addiction's a great example, right? Like you're in a facility for up to 120 days, sometimes longer, right? Like, is an MDMA or psilocybin center where you're getting 90 hours of talk therapy and 3 drug sessions, is that going to look kind of similar because you have a long duration type of billing cycle per patient? Could be.
Well, this has been a great update on the nature of the
Yeah.
current state of affairs for the industry, but this was a lot more than what I was anticipating. But as usual, appreciate the feedback. Tell Mr. Carcillo we say hi, and let's keep in
Definitely
touch.
will. All right, boys. Always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
This has been great.
As your good friend Wiz Buckley would say, fights on.
Fights on, baby. NoFallenHeroes.com. Go check out the squad over there. Save a veteran, first responder, family member's life.
Great cause.
That's good stuff. Tell Wiz we say hi too, okay?
I will, boys.
All right. Thanks, Cody.
See ya.
Hey everyone, thanks again for watching. So who's up next? Who should we interview next? Let us know. Give us your feedback. We're almost here. Could we see big legislation? If it is, man, we get our day in the sun. As usual, smash that like button. Leave lots of comments because the more comments that we have, the greater the chance that this video has to go viral. And we want this topic of conversation to hit Washington. As usual, don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone.